All right, Matt, we are back for yet another episode of Night Brothers Commentary coming to you here. Again, kind of playing a little, I guess, how do you say it? A little roulette with the topics. We've done a couple of different things. We started off with some maybe pop culture with the Mandalorian episode as we kicked on, getting back in the swing of things after the COVID kind of hiatus. Then we talked about autism, love on the spectrum, which I thought was a great conversation, a little bit more serious in nature. And then today we're going to shift to sports, which is another passion of mine and yours there. So today we are going to be talking about the NBA and the G League, and some of Matt's thoughts around new ideas, rules, updates, things that can make the game better for players and fans alike.
Yep.
So, Matt, with that being said, he's got a long list of notes here, and I'm sure, as always, we'll post it on the link for the show notes. Where do you want to start?
Probably the best place to start is that I want the NBA to kind of conform more to FIBA and all the rules that they have.
Okay.
So basically shortening the 3-point line, basically adopting the rule where...
You're talking about goaltending?
Yes, the goaltending rule.
Yep. And that's, for those of you that don't know, goaltending right now, FIBA differentiates from the NBA in the sense that if the ball, let's say you take a shot and it ricochets or it deflects off the rim, in FIBA, the defender can swat the ball away, even if it's over top of the cylinder, right?
Yes.
In the NBA, that's not the case today. They would have to let that ball kind of move off of a vertical plane upward from the cylinder. So you get a little bit more, you can be a little bit more aggressive in terms of blocking shots in the FIBA game than you can in the NBA right now.
Yeah, so that's one of the major rule differences I wanted to introduce.
Yeah.
The other thing is 10-minute quarters.
Yep.
Personally, I think 12-minute quarters is kind of long. And if you actually look at all the NBA scores nowadays, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's like, geez, like in the hundreds easily. And it's just like, really? I mean, is it just so easy to score now that it's like...
Well,
it's almost like scoring is almost meaningless to me, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
No, it's not that scoring's meaningless, Matt. I think it's easier to score now than it ever has been before in terms of how much the game has shifted towards an offensive player's game, meaning the league has loosened up, or I should say, it's probably better to say they've tightened up the rules around, how physical you can be as a defender. And so it's made it easier for the offensive player to find a way to get their shot, to make shots. We're now playing a much faster tempo game, which I think does benefit the offensive side of the ball because they're pushing the pace, they're getting quick shots. It's really more of a numbers game in terms of we're going to push the tempo, we're going to create more possessions per game, more opportunity to create points because we have increased our possessions. Now we're shooting more and more three-pointers than we ever have before because lineups have gone smaller, favoring wings versus traditional forwards or centers. So there's been kind of all these different factors that are driving the game towards, as you're calling it, just it almost seems like scoring is getting out of control. I mean,
yeah.
You see regular season games coming up to almost 150 points, and yeah, I think it is time that we start looking at how to maybe reverse that trend back towards something, a little bit more balanced.
Yeah, and that's why I think the goaltending rule really comes into play. I feel like if defenders have more of an opportunity to actually kind of prevent scoring, I think the quality of the game will overall improve.
Yeah,
and the second reason why I really wanted to add the 10-minute quarter rule as opposed to 12 minutes is the whole thing regarding load management.
I knew you were going to say that. I was going to ask you.
To me, I mean, come on. I mean, I know the NBA season's long. I mean, it's 82 games. Probably going to be 76 now for the 21 season just because of COVID and whatnot. But
No, it is going to be 76, Matt. I'm sorry I had to take a hiccup there away from
enough.
the mic. But you know what? It's part of doing this and just kind of running through it. But no, it is going to be a shortened season. I'm with you on the load management. I think, as let's say science or, exercise science has evolved over the last couple of decades, these athletes are becoming more and more, fine-tuned machines, right?
Yeah.
They're spending, I saw a statistic or some sort of figure one time. LeBron James spends over $1 million a year on his body, right? Taking care of his body.
That is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. But
I mean,
to be fair, he is a professional athlete and he makes hundreds of millions of dollars. So
right. It is and it isn't. I mean, it's ridiculous for the layperson, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about him, his body is his livelihood. So
Yeah.
I don't like LeBron James, full disclosure, but I understand why he would do it. And I think it does a disservice to the league, to the game, to the fans when you have some of these players that are consistently, sitting out games. So maybe the 40-minute game, does accomplish, two birds with one stone, so to speak, in terms of it's just going to reduce overall scoring because it's a shorter game. But also there should be a kind of a secondary effect in that it's less wear and tear on these players. And hopefully that's an encouragement for them to play every game instead of sitting out, every second or third contest.
Yeah. I mean, and really, when you think about it, I mean, that should enhance the game even more, just because the fans want to see the top end players. I mean,
correct.
I mean, they pay a crap ton of money for expensive tickets.
Tickets aren't cheap in the NBA. That's for sure.
I mean, tickets are not cheap really for any major professional league, but
right
when you think about it, but at the end of the day, I mean, the fans want to see the big time players, and when they pay a lot of money to not see them play, to sit on a flipping bench, just sitting on the sideline, it's like, well, great. I just wasted all this money for nothing. Yeah. I mean, or at least that's kind of how I would feel. Because, I mean, I want to see them play. I want to see Jimmy Butler play against the Pacers.
And you know what, Matt? I'm with you. As much as I don't like for the Pacers to lose, I want to see good basketball. I want to see the sport being played at its highest level, and that means that its best players have to be on the floor.
Yeah.
And I do understand, playing devil's advocate here. I understand the counter argument of keeping these guys healthy, and these are bigger, faster, stronger athletes. There's a lot of different things that go into it. I'm not going to pretend that I understand the nuance of it, but at the end of the day, it's an entertainment business. Their money is driven by ticket sales, by merchandise sales, by corporate sponsorships, TV, the big TV money that's flooded in. All of that comes in some form or fashion from the fans. And the fans are the lifeblood of the league. And I'm not trying to be selfish here, but if that's the profession that you are going to pick, you should be on the court. And if we have to make changes to the game, as you're proposing, Matt, to help make that easier and maybe more of a compromise so that we are keeping the players' bodies and well-being in mind, I'm all for it.
Yeah. And kind of sticking with that, there's really two things I really want to talk about when it comes to the NBA regular season.
Okay.
The first thing is the shortened schedule, because I know we already mentioned that the 21 season is going to be shortened just because of COVID and whatnot.
Yeah.
So in my system, the NBA will be playing a 78 game season regularly. So
okay.
At the end of the day, I mean, it's not that much shorter from the 82 game season, but it is shorter, and hopefully it will actually be a little bit better.
Yeah.
And not only that, so basically, I've also expanded the league from 30 to 32 teams.
Okay.
And the G League will also now be 32 teams.
Where did you, what two new markets did you expand into from an NBA standpoint?
I chose St. Louis and Seattle. Because one, as far as I can recall, I think Sacramento was thinking about relocating to Seattle.
There had been talks.
There were. Are they still talks now? Or?
No, I believe Sacramento has recently built a new arena. Yeah. I think they're making a commitment to that city. Yeah. But as we all know, Seattle's been an NBA city before, a very successful one at that.
With Gary Payton and the Supersonics.
Yeah, Sean Kemp.
Yeah, so I'm bringing back the Supersonics.
Wonderful.
And I'm also bringing back the Spirits of St. Louis.
Okay. Funny side note, Matt. The Spirits of St. Louis, old ABA team.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know that they were the only team when the NBA originally sold that as a part of their sale took royalties in terms of future revenues from the NBA?
Yeah.
So they have ended up making millions, hundreds of millions of dollars as the TV revenue has flooded in over the years. Because you got to understand that acquisition happened probably in the
late 70s.
Yeah, late 70s,
early 80s.
Early 80s, somewhere in that neighborhood. So they were taking a percentage of the NBA television revenue for years, and I think they finally, I could be talking out of turn, but I think they finally settled for I think the NBA wanted to get out of that business of paying them year after year, but it amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it was a really savvy deal on whoever the St. Louis Spirits owner was at the time. He set his family up for generations. So anyways,
that's true.
I just wanted to sidebar that as you brought him up.
Yeah. So those are the two new teams. And as a result, basically there's 16 teams in each conference, East and West.
Yep.
And I set up the divisions to be 2 divisions for each conference. So
okay,
the Atlantic division is going to be like Boston, Brooklyn, Charlotte, the Knicks, Orlando, Philadelphia, the Wizards. The Midwest is basically the Pacers, the Pistons, the Bulls, the
Cavs.
Toronto, Milwaukee, Minnesota. Central is basically Dallas, Denver, Memphis, Oklahoma City, New Orleans. And I also brought back the New Orleans Jazz.
Oh, okay.
Because honestly, to me, it makes no sense why the Jazz are relocated or have been in Utah for several decades when they have no Jazz culture at all.
Right.
It literally makes no sense to me.
So I have to ask you then.
Yeah.
I'm sure you renamed Utah.
I did.
Yeah. And what did you go with there?
I actually went with the Utah Flash,
Okay.
which was originally a G League team that I think relocated to, I forget where they relocated to, but I want to say Albuquerque. I could be wrong on that. If anyone knows better in the comments, please let us know. But I want to say it was Albuquerque, and then they folded as well. But I decided to bring back that name because I actually kind of liked it.
Yeah,
and
I like it too. It sounds, Utah Jazz, Utah Flash. It's the similar, that kind of that one syllable.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be too much of a diversion away from what they already are. And I'm with you, Matt. I mean, the Pelicans. That logo, or it's not logo, but their mascot's creepy as hell. And I do think the Jazz fits, obviously, in New Orleans much better. Yeah. I'm sure the league won't do it because of naming rights and this, that, and the other, but I understand why you're bringing that up.
Yeah, but kind of moving forward, so essentially each team will play about 6 games against the teams that they have in their division, the 7 teams in their division. Then they'll play two games against all the other teams from the other division in their conference.
Okay.
And then they'll play 1 game from one conference, so one division from the other conference in an alternating fashion each year.
Okay.
And then they'll play like 4 games against each team from the other 3 divisions based on their record from the previous season.
Okay.
So like Atlantic number 1 will play Midwest number 1, Central number 1, and Pacific number 1.
Okay. Now I have to ask you, because you added St. Louis and you added Seattle. Obviously, those are probably both Western Conference teams.
Yes, I put
Minnesota,
St. Louis in the Central, and I put Seattle in the Pacific, and I moved Minnesota over to the Midwest because, I mean, I know it's not a perfect fit.
Yeah,
but just given how the rest of the Central Division was, I felt like St. Louis was probably going to be a much better fit.
So there's 4 divisions. Did you do away with the Eastern and Western Conference?
No.
Okay, so
no.
so
basically the Eastern Conference is the Atlantic and the Midwest,
yeah,
and the Western Conference is the Central and the Pacific.
So it would be a shift for Minnesota from the West to the East.
Yes.
Is there any other shifts from West to East?
No.
Okay.
Not that I can actually recall.
No, that's fine. I was just, Matt, I'm just curious how you had it, because I think it's, I don't know, it's always cool to kind of see how you diagram it up. But
Now I want to move on to the second part of the NBA season that I really kind of want to talk about.
Yeah.
And that is Premier Points.
Premier Points.
Now,
like the Premier League?
That's actually a pretty good, that's actually a good point to bring up, because for any of you who are soccer fans, Premier Points are basically going to be the same as bonus points.
Okay.
But my system is a little bit different than what most European soccer leagues would use.
Okay.
So for both the NBA and the G League, keep that in mind. 3 points will be awarded to a team who wins a game in regulation. 2 points if they win in overtime. 1.5 points if they tie a game. 0 points for losing a game. But the bonus points come in depending on how well you play in each game. So if you lose a game by 10 points or fewer in regulation or in overtime, you get 1 bonus point.
Okay.
Or if you score at least 100 points in a game, you also get a bonus point.
Yep.
But each team can only get a max of 2 bonus points per game. So essentially, you could probably get, like, I guess, no more than 5 points a game.
Okay.
And these points will be used to rank the teams. So that way we know which teams will enter the playoffs.
Okay. So it's not necessarily based on overall record, wins and losses.
Essentially, yes and no.
Okay.
The record is basically what will be used to determine how many points that a team gets.
Okay.
So the record still matters.
Right.
But it's not
the only thing.
It's
that
not
matters.
the only thing that matters.
Yeah. So this is a more involved way of determining who really is a better team.
Yes.
Okay.
At least in theory. In practice, who
yeah.
knows?
Well, and listen, this is all theory we're talking about, anyways. So I like the idea of, giving teams an opportunity to, kind of continue to, how do I say it the right way? Make their case through beyond a W or an L, in the win-loss column.
Yeah. Now, the postseason is going to be a little bit different. Instead of 16 teams, I reduced it to 12.
Okay.
But essentially what happens is, even though the playoff is only going to be 12 teams, there's a postseason play-in.
Okay.
Because I remember reading an article about how we could improve the NBA postseason by adding this play-in, and how the NBA was talking about this. So I decided to kind of add it myself.
Nice.
So essentially, the postseason play-in is going to be 4-team tournaments featuring the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th seeds for each division.
Okay.
So, and basically the 3rd seed will play the 4th seed, and the 5th seed will host the 6th seed. And then the winners of those 2 games will face each other, and then whoever wins that game will enter as the 3rd team for each division.
3 teams per division in the playoffs.
Yes.
Okay. Any buys?
Yes. The first team seeds will be the buys.
Okay. That's what I just, because it's 12, I figured there had to be buys in there somewhere.
I mean, so essentially I just figured that would be a more interesting format as opposed to just straight up 18.
Well, and you're not the only league that, I shouldn't say that. This wouldn't be the only league doing it. Obviously, MLB has adopted the play-in game.
Yeah.
It's their version of wild card, I guess, but it's a one-game deal. Now would that play-in event or tournament be a series or just a one game winner take all?
Essentially, it's 1 game winner take all, but there's technically 2 games.
Right. That's what I mean.
But whether or not you win.
But it's not a bracketed
it's
series.
Not a bracket.
It's
no,
just
it's just winner. It's just 1 game winner take all.
And then you move on, and makes sense.
I mean, I figured it would be more interesting just to have that as opposed to like giving, because if you do like best 2 out of 3, the other, like the number 1 and number 2 seeds
they're sitting around for a while.
they're just sitting around for a while, and they get a whole lot of rest. And I just feel like, you know what, that's a really unfair advantage to them.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Now, once you get to the 12-team playoff, are we still looking at 5 or 7 game series?
Yes and no.
Okay.
The first round is basically best 2 out of 3. Second round is best 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
The third round and the championship are basically best out of 7.
Okay. Got it.
Because I just figure, because when I'm watching the NBA playoffs over the past couple of years, and every round is like best out of 7, it's like, Jesus Christ.
It's long.
I mean, it's just so long.
There's a lot of basketball, a lot of TV money, but a lot of basketball.
Yeah. And I feel like if we actually shorten the playoffs, it might actually lead to a better product, just because since there's less games, the teams are probably going to be a little bit more aggressive.
Well, and
I feel like that's only going to be better for the sport.
I would agree with you too, in the sense that a lot of the first round games, some of them, some of those 4-5 matchups can be competitive, but a lot of the 1-8s, 2-7s end up being sweeps. I mean, Pacers
they
got
really
swept
are.
this year. It's some of that stuff it can be hard to watch when it's so one sided, and reducing the total number of teams, reducing the number of games, I do think makes the product ultimately a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the goal.
Correct.
But moving on to the G League now, their regular season is only going to be 50 games long.
What is it right now? I don't even know.
I want to say it's like 52 or 50. So
Okay.
I mean, it's not really changing all that much.
Yeah.
I mean, and basically it's going to have the same format. 2 conferences, 4 divisions of 8 teams each.
Same format as the newly adapted 32 team that you have right now.
Yeah, because now each NBA team has their own G League affiliate.
Right. Which I like. I mean, I think the G League's been a great thing, certainly for the Pacers. We've had that couple players do the 2-way contract where they're able to play a certain number of games for the, quote unquote, big club or the major league club, the Pacers, and then send them down to the G League. Victor Oladipo played some time down there when he was coming back from injury last year. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great resource, and it gives more players the opportunity to prove themselves.
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
Yeah. So, and eventually, and the postseason for the G League is basically going to be 8 teams. The first 2 rounds are single elimination because at the end of the day, who's going to sit around watching
the G League?
It's the G League. It's not meant for truly competitive competition. It's basically just meant to help develop players. But at the end of the day, it's also nice.
You're playing games.
Yeah, you're playing games. So that's what the playoffs.
I think that makes sense, Matt. Yeah. It's a good. You want to have something there, but you don't have to necessarily do a 7-game series. It's not relevant.
Yeah, and the championship is basically a 2 out of 3.
Okay, nice. That's cool.
Now, the interesting thing that I have actually added, and I know I put it somewhere.
A lot of notes.
Yeah, there is a lot of notes here. So, and odds are we're not going to go through everything in these notes. That's just going to be the sad truth of it.
That's all right, though.
But I will put them on the website, and the link will be in the description below. So, if you want to find out more about my ideas, please go take a look. I would love for people to do that,
and give feedback if you've got feedback or thoughts or maybe something different or something you like.
Now, the thing I was wanting to talk about is after the G League regular season or postseason, depending on each individual team ends.
Yeah,
a max of 5 G League players, the two-way contract players plus 3 additional ones, can move up to the NBA roster and then play games with them.
Okay.
Especially even during the postseason. So
okay.
And I feel like that is actually going to be a great way for them to really kind of have at least more playing time in a more competitive environment.
They're getting exposed to the real thing.
Yeah.
I like that. Now, whether or not the coach actually plays those players,
that's going to depending on each
situational.
team.
Yeah. If you're up and you got a lead and you can get some guys some time, great. But at least even just, to be around the locker room, to be a part of some of those, coaching dynamics and things and seeing what it's like to be, in an NBA locker room, I think is good experience for somebody who is in a developmental type league like the G League.
I kind of got the idea from the MLB September call-ups.
Okay.
Because they bring them I want to say 15 or so minor league players.
Okay.
In September. I think they're starting to change that. I think they're just going to lower it to I don't know, maybe 28 players or something.
Okay.
But anyway, I actually kind of like the idea because I feel like I think it's just better for the sport and both leagues in general if there's more G League players interacting with NBA players and playing in a more, I guess, shall we say, competitive.
It's a higher caliber.
Yeah, it's a higher caliber, more competitive environment, essentially,
No doubt about it.
So I just feel like it's better for everyone.
I would agree.
Now, the salary is where I think I kind of deviate from the NBA the most.
Salary for NBA or G League?
Both.
Okay, let's hear it.
Now, for starters, both NBA and G League teams can no longer give guaranteed player contracts.
Okay.
I feel like
players aren't going to like that.
That is true. But I personally feel like the system has been abused for too long, especially by the big markets like New York and LA. I just feel like those teams have gotten away with so just ridiculous amount of salaries that they have to actually pay out, even if the guy is hurt and no longer playing.
Yeah.
To me, I just feel like it's a joke.
Yep.
I really do. But I also have a new salary cap.
Okay.
The salary cap which is now similar in structure to the NFL. It's no longer a soft one with a luxury tax. It's a hard one like the NFL.
Okay.
And it's basically $85 million.
Wow. Okay. That's a reduction.
It actually is a reduction because I just feel like, again, I mean, there are just so many players, or at least it seems like there's just so many players in the NBA making a crap ton of money. I mean, just a ludicrous amount of money to me. It's like, really? I know it's like, I know you guys are working your butts off basically year round to be the best player that you can be. And I'm not saying you don't deserve a lot of money, but come on. I just feel like it's just the money. I mean, it's just so bloated compared to MLB and the NBA, NFL, especially the NFL.
The NFL, yes. MLB, maybe a lesser degree. There's some ridiculous contracts there too. I think,
that's
Matt,
true.
The hard part,
like Clayton Kershaw, for example, but
yeah, the pushback you're going to get, Matt, is that the TV money's coming in, okay, and it's going to go somewhere. So it's either going to go to the players or it's going to go to ownership, and these organizations are making money too. And the Indiana Pacers, it's a corporation. They pay their players, and they it's basically an expense for them. And I hear you, but the money, if we're cutting players' salaries just because we think the numbers look too big, all we're really doing is putting more money in the pocket of ownership because the money's going to be there. The television money is negotiated, so. I do hear you, and I agree that it's gotten exorbitant. But I don't know how much. I don't know how. I think you'd get a lot of pushback there if that money could be redistributed to developing G League or things like that. I mean, if there's a clear plan in place for how that money can be utilized, maybe there's some sort of community aspect that television money gets distributed to these markets where these teams live each day. I mean, there's a lot of creative things you could do, but just to say, we don't.
Here's the thing. Mm-hmm. Because while I certainly agree that if it's not going to go to the players, it's going to go to the ownership, that I totally agree with. But I think, and this is kind of where the G League salary comes into play, because I lowered the NBA salary to kind of at least help raise the G League salary.
Okay, there you go. So there's one avenue to where some of that money's going to go, and I like that. I think that's great.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I wanted to have the minimum salary for all G League players to be about at least $45,000 per season.
Okay.
If you come from out of college or the development or at least a European or international league, that's the minimum salary for those players. The minimum salary for high school players is at least $91,000.
Oh wow. Okay.
And personally, I feel like that is actually probably going to help attract more players out of high school as opposed to just doing the one and done thing from college. I mean, to be honest, I feel like that system's a joke. I really do.
It seems a little bit. It just seems a little bit superficial. It's like, oh, I'm going to go play this for 1 year, and then everybody knows they're going to go to the league. So what are we really doing? I mean, do they really? Oh, they're 18 now. They're 19. Well, wow, big change. I think it's a way that the league has kind of thrown a bone to college basketball to try and, keep some intrigue and keep some of these really talented guys going to the Dukes, the North Carolinas, the Kentuckys of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when I look at it, all Zion Williams did a couple years ago was risk. It was just all risk. Him playing at Duke was just a big risk. There was really no upside. He was going to go number 1 overall in the draft regardless of whether he went to Duke or not. So,
and that's where I want the G League to kind of take a bigger role in terms of player development.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Especially since with the G League, you're probably going to be a little bit more in contact with NBA players and NBA coaches, and hopefully, I mean, at the very least, just try to, I don't know, have a little bit more.
You're a little bit more connected to the game. Yeah, no doubt about it.
I feel like that's what the G League can offer that college can't.
I would agree with that.
Now, probably the last thing I want to talk about is the NBA draft.
Okay, love it. We just had it virtually,
a
couple of weeks ago, but I'm curious your thoughts. Yes.
Yep. The first, there's instead of just it being 2 rounds, it's 3 rounds now.
Okay.
The third round is basically just going to be for only G League eligible players.
Ah, I got it. That's kind of nice.
I mean, so it's basically kind of combining the NBA and G League drafts into one.
Very cool. So some of those players that would only be G League eligible, may have to wait till the third round to get their name called.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so basically, if you've played at least 3 years in college or in an international league somewhere else, you're eligible to be straight up to NBA.
Yep.
But if you're coming out of high school, you have to play in the G League for at least 2 to 3 years.
Now let me ask you this. Let's say there was a player like Zion Williamson, okay, who was coming out of high school, and he decided not to go to college, and he was going to put his name in and get drafted by the G League, okay? And the Fort Wayne Mad Ants drafted him.
Well, here's the thing. It's not going to be the Fort Wayne Mad Ants.
That's where I was going. Yeah.
It's just going to be the parent organizations drafting, and then they're going to be assigned to the G League team, just like how the MLB draft works.
Yep. That's what I just was curious because I wanted to make sure there was a tether there, a clear line to that player getting to an actual NBA franchise. Because the reality is, let's say Zion Williamson came out this year, he probably would have been the best player in the draft. And you know what I mean? He would have been better than the guys in the actual first round. He would have been more coveted, right?
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense to do it that way. So what else, Matt? We've covered a lot of different topics here in about 34 minutes-ish.
Yeah, so basically kind of continuing on with the NBA draft.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you had more. Perfect.
Yeah. Trust me, I got more. The first round is going to be a little bit more, it's going to be more like the NFL, if you will.
Yep.
So basically, the non-playoff teams are going to be ranked 1 from 20, just depending on how many bonus points they have.
Yep.
And then it kind of just goes down from there. So then the non-playoff teams go first, then the quarterfinals from the conference, then the semifinals, then the conference finals, then the NBA runner-up, and then the NBA champion. Just kind of like how the NFL works.
Yep.
But the difference is the second and third rounds are going to be kind of like how the NBA draft works now.
Ah, okay.
So it's kind of a combination of those two.
So a little bit of a lottery aspect, but also a little bit of a performance aspect.
Yes.
Very cool. I like that a lot, actually.
Because I feel like the teams that are actually going to be a little bit worse off, if they can get more players, like more higher quality players in the draft, then hopefully it will help build the teams and actually just make better better basketball.
So those second and third round lottery, will the lottery work similarly as from the standpoint of the worst team has the best likelihood of getting a higher pick or a lower pick, I should say?
No.
Okay.
If anything, it's just truly random.
Oh, it is random.
Just truly random.
I actually like that better because you're rewarding, I shouldn't say rewarding, you're giving the worse off team an opportunity in the first round to pick a better player.
Yeah.
And then you're just saying, you know what? We're going to randomly allow everybody else to figure it out in the second round, which second and
the third round.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool. It certainly shakes it up a little bit.
Yeah, it really does. And I just figured that'd be a little bit more entertaining to watch.
I think it would be. I mean, it certainly keeps the fan engaged because every year you've got an opportunity to, if there is a Zion Williamson who's going to come out of, high school and going to be available in that third round, your team has a chance every year to potentially, take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And make that, make that selection. So I think that's really cool, man.
Yep. I mean, I think right now is probably a good time to cut it off.
Yeah.
If we keep going, it's going to be over an hour. So
yeah. Well, we can do this probably in a 2-part series. So let's kind of put a pin in the conversation.
Yep.
We'll get this one uploaded before the season kicks off, and then maybe after we get some feedback and stuff from listeners, we can do a part 2. Make sure we cover everything else that you've touched on. And until next time, Night Brothers Commentary. We're signing out.